Right, good morning, everyone. And here we come to the next lesson plan again. And so last week, you've been asked to doing a lot of research and come up with the essay outline. And I saw some of them already and left some comments. So I am planning to finish looking at the outline this week so that I'll give you time to revise and change the necessary sort of information you have put in there. Okay, now for this week, I'm going to look at how we're going to use the supporting data. So first of all, maybe let me go to the lesson plan first. Okay. Okay, lesson plan. So we are in week 10 now. Okay, now, so after you have done your essay outline, I'm going to look at how you're going to use the source materials you have found and avoid plagiarism. And this lesson will focus on how you're going to use the direct quotations. You tried it briefly in the WC1 already, the first assessment, but there are a couple of more things I like to remind you when you use the direct quotations, because in your WC1, I never asked you to do the in-text citation. So this lesson, I'm going to talk probably how to use the in-text citations in APA style. And while you're using the materials, of course, you need to introduce the source materials. So while you're introducing the source materials, you might need to use the reporting verbs, all right, to outline the attitude of the writer of the materials about the issues. Okay, so materials I'm going to use is Unit 8, Unit 10, and so, but in my lesson plan, I'll refer to this already. So these are just for your reference. So first of all, let's talk about plagiarism. You must have heard about this word plagiarism for a long, long time, all right, for other courses or for in your secondary school, perhaps. Now, this is very simple. Basically, you are told not to copy directly from source materials. That's why you've been using Turnitin to check whether you have copied, all right, intentionally or unintentionally. So just to remind you, if you copy, you'll get 0 mark. For more serious cases, like what I came across in the past term, sometimes I don't want to, but I had to refer 1 or 2 students to the student disciplinary committee because basically the whole essay was found to copy a lot from the source materials. So don't do that. In fact, there's a university policy, not from our center, that all first-year students are required to take this online tutorial on plagiarism awareness course. And it's just a multiple choice tests after you've done the course. I was told that if you haven't done the test, you're not allowed to choose your subjects, register for the subjects for the second year. So please do that. Now, how do we avoid plagiarism? Very simple, all right? So basically, and as you can see from the red boldface, I mentioned about 1, 2, 3 things. Number 1 is by using quotations, paraphrases, and in-text citations. How are you going to use this to avoid plagiarism? This is what I'm going to talk about in this lesson. And for this lesson particularly, normally quotations are easier to be done. So I'll focus on quotations. I'll leave the paraphrases for the next week because it's a bit more challenging and difficult. All right, now, so I'm sure you understand the meaning of direct quotations, but there are some rules for using the direct quotations. Now, if you have chosen less than 40 words from the source materials, all right, what you have to do is just do the word for word copying. Don't change other words. The punctuation marks should be double quotation marks. You can put the direct quotations either at the beginning of your own sentence the middle, or at the end. All right, so anywhere. Okay, so there are some guidelines I just like to briefly explain to you on the handout. Now, if you put the quotes at the beginning, quotes can be put at the end of the sentences. That means if you start the sentence by saying according to Peach, all right, and then look at the punctuation mark, it should be comma, and then start with the quotations you have found. Then of course you have to use the double quotation marks and also capital letters, right? I for images. And when you finish, full stop and close the double quotation marks. And same thing, sometimes you may not want to use the whole sentence, maybe just half of the sentence of the quote, then do the same thing. So always open digital bank is just half the sentence. Now, but please pay attention to the punctuation. If you put the in-text citations, that is RAUV, all right, 2017, paragraph 10, then make sure that the full stop should be after the closing bracket of the in-text citations. Okay, so all the highlights can be seen quite clearly. Sometimes you might like to put part of the quotations in the middle of your sentence. So same thing, no trick, but make sure the grammar is coherent. So even you take some of the words out from the quotations, make sure your own sentence is grammatical. So like here, any web page should be able to read in different layout formats. All right, so this bit you pick and choose. Also use the double quotation marks, which make the important information visible to the user. Okay, so same thing. And it can be used at the beginning of the sentence, all right? Or sometimes could be split the sentence into two, all right? So you use first part and the middle part, maybe you found it not very relevant, so you cut it and then chose to continue with the last part of the sentence. It's also okay, but look at the format, the punctuation marks, as you can see from my handouts very clearly. So make sure the punctuation marks are right as well. It's quite confusing sometimes. And some more information about the quotations. Now, sometimes when you use a quotation, because you read the whole article, it makes sense to you, all right, the meaning of the quotation. But for the reader, if you just pick out one sentence, sometimes it's quite unclear. So take, for example, this one, and the writer used, some individuals make a point of learning every rumor or tale. Now, some individuals could be clear to you, but for me, I don't understand. You suddenly take out the quotation, say some individuals, but which individuals, who are they? So if you like to make your quote clearer, then you can make use of what we call the square brackets, all right? So what are the square brackets? You can see I enlarge it here for you. That is who retell urban legends. Now this part is not from the quotation, it's from you yourself, because you want the reader to have a clear idea about the quotations. That's why you add something extra. But when you add something extra, make sure you yourself use the what we call the square brackets. And another thing is, what about if the quotation is very long and some part of it is not really relevant? Then what I would suggest is to use the ellipsis. Ellipsis means using the 3 dots, as you can see, all right, 3 dots. So what it means is, take for example, this sentence again, some individuals make a point of learning every recent rumor or tale. A large part of the sentence perhaps is irrelevant. So you use ... ellipsis and take out the last sentence. So that is also okay, all right? How about if the quotations are very, very long, almost like a paragraph long? Now, in this case, if the quotations are more than 40 words, what you do is to use the block style. Block style, that means like this. You don't need to use any quotation marks at all, but use the indented paragraph. And it's very precise here. It says 1.25 cm, all right? So maybe you just tap the enter 5 times. It's about 1.25 cm. And make it indented. No punctuation marks, no quotation marks, but put in the in-text citations at the end. okay? Now, the next question is, you have a choice when you see the use the materials, all right? You might have taken down some notes. They're all quotations, all right, from source materials. But when you write in your essay, you have to make a choice whether you should use a quotation or a paraphrase. Now, obviously, a quotation is much easier. You just take out the word, you know, you don't have to change anything. But it's not a good idea if you fill up your essays with all the quotations. Why? Because quotations are very restricted to be used, right? You only use quotation when you come across some idea which you definitely want to focus on and argue about that. A bit like your WC1, right? Your test. I ask you to pick out a quotation because I like to see exactly what theory, statement, argument you like to debate about. All right, so in this case, of course, you take it out. Or sometimes the views are very technical, okay? Maybe a theories, you want to explain a term called euthanasia, all right? Not everyone understands the technical term. Then in this case, you might just quote directly the definition of euthanasia, for example, okay? And in other words, if you come across something that you feel you cannot change the words, because if you change it, the meaning will be lost or will be unclear, then you use quotation marks. Otherwise, I would suggest you would just summarize or paraphrase the quotation, okay? Because you're not only getting the words itself, but just want to get the overall meaning. And you could also minimize the number of words, because if you use quotations, a lot of words, but if you can explain in paraphrase, that for me as a teacher, I can see you really understand the original meaning, all right, not misinterpret it. Just like in your WC1, sometimes students, I ask you, put a quotation and explain it. You may not explain the right idea. Then I can see you don't really quite understand the text. So in a way, this is for the teachers to check whether you understand the original meaning. Now, there's no set rule how many quotations you should use in an essay, but if you refer to our task sheet, we suggest you don't use more than 10% of the total number of words, all right, if you compare to the total number of words. So don't overuse quotations. It's always good if you can paraphrase. Okay, now, it doesn't really matter whether you use quotation or paraphrase. Another thing you need to pay attention is to use the in-text citations. Now, you heard me talking about the term in-text citations many times already. In-text citations means you just put down the source materials, all right, inside your essay. That's why it's called in-text, all right? Now, usually the in-text citations, all right, includes the family name of the writer, year of publication, or page numbers. If no page number, you use the paragraph numbers. Now let's look at two examples here. All right, on the left is paraphrase, on the right is a quotation. So when you use the citation for paraphrases, you notice that you do not need to use the page number, no page number at all. So Warthout, W-A-R-D-H-A-U-G-H, you can see, is the surname of the writer. 2000 is the number of year, the year of publication. And look at the full stop again. So make sure it is put after the brackets, not before. Many students put it before the in-text citations. It's wrong. It should be after, okay? Now, if you turn to the quotations, you notice there is a page number here, all right? So in other words, please remember no page number for paraphrases or summaries, only for quotations, okay? Now, when we talk about page number in quotations, there are some different situations. So for example, sometimes if you look at a web page, they don't have the page number, then what happens? Now, if they don't have the page numbers, you often see we use PARA, which means paragraph, all right? So paragraph number. Or sometimes if there are section headings, like the subheadings of an article, you could use an abbreviated, just 2 words, first 2 words for the subheadings. Okay, now sometimes it might have more than 1 page. So if you continue, take for example, you start the quotation from page 2 and then it continues to page 3, that means it covers 2 pages. In this case, you use PP, all right, PP, that is for pages. Or sometimes your quotation could be chosen from page 58, but later on, useful information appears in 62, but you want to use it in the sentence of yourself, then you just use page 58, 62. If there's absolutely no page number, all right, if these social media things, you just write down the name of the authority, BBC or CMP and things like that. Now, when it comes to authors, sometimes it's very tricky, both for paraphrases and quotes. All right, now it doesn't matter whether it's paraphrases or quotes, you need to put in author's name. But sometimes there's no author at all. Take, for example, you just have a magazine with the name of the magazine like Psychology Today, but the article does not include any writer's name. So in this case, you just write down the name of the article, okay, or newspaper names, or even from a particular organization, all right? If you saw something like, for example, at Ningnan University, then you can use Ningnan University if you don't see any information there. Author's name, I mean. 2 authors, same thing, put down 2 using the ampersand. Ampersand is short form for N. What about 3 to 5? Now, sometimes there are a lot of writers for a particular article. Then it's boring and it's too long to list all the writers' names. And in this case, then if there are 3 to 5 authors, you could just write down a-tel, which is a Latin word that means with others, right? A-tel, E-T-A-L. That's easier. So same thing. ND, that means no date. That is usually for the webpage articles. Then you can't find any date at all. And personal communication, let's forget that. I don't encourage you to do this for our essay, but just for your other courses, if you need to use personal communication. Okay, so if you are in doubt, check out 2 websites. One is Curtin University, one is from Maisie University. And the second one, Maisie University, you have seen already for compiling an APA references. All right, so check it out again. Now, the final part I would like to talk about is reporting verbs. Now, why do we need to learn how to use reporting verbs? Now, is related to the source materials, because when you introduce your source materials, like the quotations, for example, last time when I marked your WC1, I saw some students just put in a quotation, no introductory phrases, and no explanation at all. All right, now that is very, very bad. Whenever you like to use the quotations, you must use some introductory phrases. What are introductory phrases? Such as the first one you can see, Shaki argued convincingly that blah, 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 blah. All right, now so Shaggy argued convincingly is what we call the introductory phrase to the quotation or paraphrase. And the verb you use, argue, is to show the attitude of the writer. Of course, you have to look at the whole article or the text itself, right? And whether you think the writer is arguing or whether the writer is just simply trying to prove his point. So all these words are what we call action verbs, reporting verbs, all right? Now, so if you want to show the agreement of the writer, of course, you use the word argue, proved, or demonstrated by. But if something you don't really know and quite neutral, then normally quite often used is according to, all right? So according to Carr is what we call the introductory phrase to your source materials. Observed, Carr's point is that, all right? If the writer disagrees, you might say claimed, maintained, and asserted, all right? Now, there are many more. Can you think about more? So I'll leave it to you to look at the lesson plan and come up with something. There are there's a key after that, so I just jump this and go to the next stage. So same thing for showing attitude. Making suggestion, you can use suggest, suggested, proposed, recommended. And emphasize a point, you can say emphasizes, focus on, and stresses. Something not so important, you might say comments, looks, or as mentioned, by. Okay, yet again, think about some other words you know, you might have done it before, so check the answer key later. I jump. What about tenses? When you use this reporting verb tenses, do you use present or past or present perfect? Now, I would say it's quite common to use past tense because you're reporting what the writer said. Okay, so normally we use past tense, but sometimes you might see some people, writer, use present tense or present perfect tense. In two situations, that is when the materials, you can see the date is pretty current, not even, you pick up an article from year 2020, this year, so you can, of course, use present tense. Or the theories you quoted, pretty solid, and some kind of theories or truth, then of course it's still true, then valid, then you can use present tense or present perfect, all right? Okay, now, so this is for this week in text citations and reporting verbs. I have posted the exercise you're supposed to do this week, so please do that, which helps you to learn how to use the in-text citations and reporting verbs clearly. Okay, so as usual, any questions, let me know. The answer key will be posted on Moodle on Monday next week. Okay, see you, bye-bye.